Hi there, Randy Green here, and welcome to the next podcast or the next lecture in the whole Academy Free online courses, where we're talking about the matrix of change or the new reality programs. And they are, of course, having different legs and they can be interpreted in different ways, but I'm taking the information and giving my version of it. Because as you will learn, when we work with holographic information systems, they are adaptable and they can be unfolded because it is an impression. It's an imprint into a holographic energy system. And they can be unfolded in the manner we find suitable so that we express our consciousness potentials within the lines of the developmental programs. And that's part of the progressive worlds, and that's part of the Pillar Project. And that's how we arranged it inside this reality. So even though the matrix of change, as it has been given, is both used by the para-universal matrix, the dark ones, the technocrats, what have you, we are not going their highway. They're, of course, in taking this information and adapting it to their jurisdictions and their sectors. Here, I want to adapt it into means to an end so that we get in contact with the original density energies of our reality field. And with that, will there be able to make choices of where we want to go. And therefore, I'll teach the matrix of change within the concepts and frames of references that are connected to the original Pillar Project that had the main purpose of transforming the D13 collective energies, getting us going and get us back into the next set of the universal cycles and the true purpose of why we exist, at least within the perspective of the D14 collective. The D13 collective have a different agenda. They're looking at things in a different way. But since I have covered all of that in all of my materials so far, let's move on. Enough is enough. We have given them enough energy. If you want to get the background, the history, etc., it's already as part of the whole Academy course material, what is necessary to understand and for you to remember your own affiliation and where you belong. So when we talk about this here in this lecture, I want to talk about, again, remember, first and foremost, let's set the stage. When I'm doing this is you are literally listening to a lecture. You are in an auditorium. You are sitting there. We don't have the sphere of direct interaction potentials with the holographic teaching system, unfortunately. This is not meant for you to bombard me with email questions. Not at all. This is for you to contemplate upon, and how to do that is explained in the first course, understanding the background of the new reality programs. And yes, you have to buy that one for the price that I've put there for now. And with that, you will get that tool. But there are also the free material of how to contemplate that are based upon the CRNA version that are connected to the Pleiadian, overtaken, Great White Brotherhood, understanding of things, so to speak, and how they began talking about contemplation and what that really means. And contemplation means to work with energy in a manner that generates the mind field. So you create informative patterns, complex information patterns, using the information that you're listening to. It's not just about learning it in a linear way. It's about learning to work with that information on 6 layers, which I explain in the psychic energy, the psychic processes, and keeping the psychic energetic balance, which are the first 3 courses of the transition science course material. So all of that is covered in different branches of information, because each segment of information must be taught within its own holographic feature, within its own pattern, and where it has its purpose. So information cannot just be shared in some kind of big pool of whatever, where we go all sorts of directions, because that's what distortion is. So first step to work with complex information system is to understand them within their correct box or space. And that's what we learn in the D13 collective. That's kind of where you organize things as patterns of information that are affecting the reality field in a specific way. And if it is expressed in a complexity rate that is enormously high, then it can technically create a completely new reality. It's all about momentum. And that's the amplification factor, or the Victoria amplification factor, which I'll explain a little bit more in the matrix of change. So what you're here understanding, how you are to see this, is that you are in this auditorium, you're here having a lecture. And what I'm telling you here is you have decided that you want to shift reality fields. You want to go somewhere else. And that is typically what we call a holographic migration, where you learn about the new place you're going. You learn the sciences there. You learn the rules of engagement, which you already had learned in the pillar project under the 2-8 pillar. You learned all about the rules of engagement, how you are around self and others and these dynamics, and how you impact other living being. And I've talked about that both in basic concepts as well as in the more advanced levels of the progression work course material. But there is absolutely more to put to it the more you get into the understanding of the holographic features and how they impact each other, and influence each other. Thereby you also understand the high responsibility rate there is being part of holographic realities. And I go deeper into that in the transition sciences, going in full blown into the template science course material. And then we are in the Changemaker 4 courses. There are 3 of them are looking at, okay, then who are you now? How are you going to adapt to these things? What are the psychological challenges on what we would say the present day level of who and what you are? But to be able to get to the next point of your evolution, you need to get, let's say, when we evolve and when we shift between different systems, we need to have some kind of trajectory to go to. So we need to get the point of what we are to develop ourselves into. We call this a goal. And that we have to have a strategy to go there. But strategies, when we talk about strategies in holographic reality fields, are different, because there is no strategy per se. There is to learn about the system you want to join. And then you literally on all of its pillars, all of its information layers, and via that learning process, you adapt your energy system. And as you learn more and more about that system, your energy system will reconfigure itself due to the information you are working with in contemplation and reconstruction and energy work. As in, you're part of that auditorium, that holographic school, because it's holographic. You create it along with the other students that want to go there. I have joined, I have participated or signed up to be the instructor. So I have chosen this, I've created the room, and now you're joining this room where you're sitting in holographic chairs and you're listening. What I'm doing here is both visual, auditory, as well as explanatory. Normally, it would just be given as packages of information. And that would be easier, because then this information would imprint your holographic energy system naturally. And then you would return to your own state in whatever sector you're living in. And you would then have the imprint as a part of possibility of your holographic energy system. And you would work with that in different projects where you could see if you could align with that new holographic structure. As in, you were still in that world. Let's say you were in some kind of different system. Let's not put any classification on it, because these systems do not have classifications as we understand of them. But there is different type of holographic energy. And therefore, by you working with the new structures and the new complex information systems and the patterns of change of the system you want to become part of, you adapt and align more and more with the new sciences, and that will change you energetically and consciously, so that you align yourself with the system you want to enter into, and by that are using the progression dynamics to get into energetic and genetic affinity with the system you want to jump into or transfer into. And then you will shed off the molecular form, and you will do that by your own doing, recalibrate and deformulate, as it's called. You will literally just disperse your molecular state. That's a vibrational feature you have. You will decompose your own physical form, the matter form you've chosen, that system. You will take your light body and your consciousness template, and you will go through the gate systems into the reality you want to enter into. And because you understand the sciences and the laws and the rules and the principles of that system you want to enter into, it is easy for you to reformulate a molecular structure from where you will take on a form that will be suitable for what we call the outer reality interaction potentials with the reality you want to be part of. And still, you will have your own personal holographic energy system behind with your personal version of the consciousness units. And that personal version of your consciousness units are part of what we learn in the 410 pillar work, where we have the 1-7 pillar, where we learned all about the radiation, vibration, fields, similarly as the teachings I'm giving you here. That's the basic level of how you want to enter into a system. That's the 1-7 pillar. The 2-8 is where you learn about the others in the reality field, how you interact with them, what are their culture, what are you doing there, how do you impact them, how do you take responsibility for who and what you are. These are the rules of engagement, and how you contain yourself so that you are adapting to the system that you are entering into in a manner that is harmless, so that you can be there, figure out if you really want to be there, interact with others without destroying their reality field, so to speak. And then in the 3-9 pillar, you begin to learn about the sciences, the natural laws of energy of the system. That's where you really go in and say, yeah, I really want to be part of that one. And that's what the pillar project was. It was a school project, so to speak, where we taught the humanoids of the D13 collective, this is how you get into the D14. So for me, it's just kind of, I'm just doing what I did back then. No difference, right? So here I want to talk a little bit about the 410 pillar, because you already had the 1-7 where you understood the personal work that's already done in the progression work course material, including 2-8 and 3-9 as much as we can at that point in time where we are now. It's when we talk about getting ready to really do encounters with the different races, I did begin with the rules of engagement with some of the the D10 collective races, and what we're working under them, insectoids and avians and reptoids and what have you, as part of what we call the regressed levels or the artificial fourth dimension. But it just became clear to me, especially after my visits in Australia and my dealings with these territorial races, that there really was no big rules of engagement. They were tribal, they were warriors, it were kind of simple rules that we have similarly in our society, because humans inside our world are part of these races. So there's nothing there except they have a little bit more advanced judge system, transgression, and some of these rule sets. But people will learn this the hard way as they get into the artificial fourth dimension, because they will learn it via encounters. And what I have taught in the progression work will suffice to get through it, because in the end, how do we get through these different realms of races? We have two options. Either we migrate and assimilate and become one of them, or we work way through what we call diplomatic green paths, where we have perhaps a molecular state that is similar to the reality field we are part of, but everything else is aligned with our own world. And that's kind of the way that we are going to do this now, and how we are to perceive ourselves as we continue our existence inside this reality field. Yes, we have a molecular state that is suitable for this reality field, but we are recreating our entire holographic energy system and consciousness potentials template architecture inside in our quote unquote light body, which will, once we then shed off this physical form, will then use to move beyond, either as an orb in the 6th or as a completely composed light body in the 5th cycle composition, because the races and the futures that we can go into, they have the 5th cycle as the minimum, because when we're talking about the regress races and the parallel universal matrix and what have you, they are all situated still in the 4th cycle. So that's why we need to shift out of that one. and why all what we say spiritual teaching systems inside this reality field is focused on compassion in the heart field. And I've taken that one step further and said, yes, this is all about, that's a way to navigate through what we say, if you are living in a cruel society or led by the mafia, how do you get through there? Do you get through there being compassionate and get yourself killed over and over again, as I did as a Chinese monk in the 1950s, right? That did not really get me anywhere. Where did it, other than just being tortured and going through an enormous amount of suffering. And yes, I had my principles, but and I did say, yes, this is just my body and everything inside is different. But in this time around, I've chosen a different standpoint, as in kind of, I think the way to go through this, and that's part of the, what we could say, the higher levels of all of the structures of the races that are present here, is to be impeccable. And that means that you follow the laws to the dot. You follow the purity rate, the standards, and the progression rate of the system you want to be part of to the dot, so that your internal structure, your inner human, is so aligned with where you want to go that it doesn't, whatever's going on with the physical form, it will begin to adapt to that level as well. And that's technically what's called the transfiguration. So even though we for a long period of time will be what we could say in a molecular state that is in alignment with the enclosure, and we're trying to build the light body, the problem is the artificial fourth and fifth and the distortion fields, that even though we do create that light body, it is difficult to maintain it because of all of these layers of artificiality and distortion that is part of our reality field. So therefore, the original dynamics do not fully cut it. And that's part of some of the issues and the challenges of the clearing work in the new realities, where we are to learn, yes, we have built that original structure. Oops, we got harvested. Oops, we got wiped. Oops, we got imprinted. Oops, something else happened. How do we maintain that? How do we keep ourselves going so that when it's time, we can shed off this molecular form and move on? And that's why we need to focus on, okay, we also need to change the molecular form so it vibrates differently than the rest of the populace that we are part of, that we are not interfering with our surroundings. We are not becoming part of our surroundings. We use the body as a bolster to protect ourselves from influences and influencing factors from the surroundings. So that's part of what the new reality program is also aligning us with, what we could call the expanded sector of the Gaian system, that will then provide what we could call a molecular state that will render us human in appearance, but molecularly change it into a different vibration so that we can, what we could say, repel the influencing energies of the enclosure, because it's more difficult here than it is in the original holographic realities. So when we come to the top level of our template structure, template science course 1, 2, and 3 explained there, then you also understand that we have three main features that goes with I have called it in the whole philosophy book, as well as in the new grand cycle transition science course 1 and 2. I've called it the word, the vow, and the will. And this is just me playing on the three V's. Sorry about that. It's difficult to say, right? Second language. Okay, so, but when I say the word, it technically is your consciousness signature. That's what you have with you, no matter what cycle you're part of. That's yours specifically. It's a symbol that is divided into long sequences of code systems. So it's not just one symbol, but it's a symbol that if you blast it into all of its features, it will tell you everything you are. And that is untouchable from anyone else. That's what's connected to the infinity cycle. But here we are learning to eventually disconnect it from the infinity cycles and connect it to the body and create our own life force, so to speak, from where we will have the potentiality and the possibility of actually becoming an infinity sphere ourselves. And that is something you can see how I kind of, in the previous cycles, we were connected to the infinity field as the quote unquote source of viability. that kept us going. And in the D14 collective and the cycles we are in now, via 12 universal cycles, we are developing our individual infinity sphere from where we will become eternal, because we'll be going on our own, talk about recirculation and sustainability to its highest degree. So that's what we are aiming for. And with that, that's the vow. That's the understanding of why we're doing this. And for me, it's something in my heart. I never, let me use the word feather, because I don't know it's the right one, but I'm not shifting like a feather or a leaf in the wind. I stand completely solidified in that understanding in my heart field. So that adapts and affects the timelines and code streams I'm on. It affects everything I am, because I'm not bowing on that one. That's my core strength. It's just kind of, I know exactly who and what I am and what I'm doing. And with that, not making me some kind of selfish bastard and service to self or anything. On the contrary, because of that function and that original purpose and that original signature, I know exactly where I'm going with what I'm doing and how I transform. I am transformative by that strength into the original rules and laws and principles of the D14 collective. So everybody who gets in contact with me will have a rub off of this is the original purpose of our existence. Because it's in me, my version of it, of course, but it's in me, and you will have it in you once you get to your consciousness potentials, where you have your word and vow and will. And with that understanding, once you have the word of your true function and purpose, the word and the vow, purpose and function, then the will to whatever you're doing will come from within as this strong power. That's the true empowerment. When you understand who and what you are, your core essence, you are empowered in ways that goes beyond. You will always recorrect yourself to the original core configuration that is part of your consciousness potentials. That's why you travel through systems, developing yourself. You will never lose that core essence of who and what you are, but it is changeable. It will change according to the energies you're part of. It has adapted and changed and assimilated to this system, which you will see in my teachings. I have adapted them to this reality and who you are now and what you need to hear now. And then I'm step ladder building it up to more and more being in alignment with who we're supposed to be and how we are in the density wells. So that's kind of, everything is not rigidly the same, which is why the Hindus, when they had this reincarnating principle that goes over and over again being the same, were discussed by the Buddha as in kind of, no, it's not the same because it's impermanent. It changes according to the skandhas it's part of. And therefore it will always change and adapt to the reality field it's part of. And therefore there is no reincarnating principle as in the understanding of the true world, so to speak. There is inside the enclosure because that's your template that's being reused again and again and again. And since your consciousness potentials are not allowed to develop, well, then there is a reincarnating principle that is the same, but is engineered to not develop, and by that are creating distortion. So that's part of karma. That's part of the Hindu teachings, but the Hindus are controlled by the Nagas. So no wonder that's part of the TG versions of the Syrians. So we are Syrian A. So you begin to understand the teachings that have been given are not necessarily been given for our purpose, but might have been given for the different groups that were still here trying to keep themselves alive. Because if they are kind of, that's why they call it the hijackers. So if a Syrian A Naga is connected to you as a quote unquote higher self, well, then of course it's not going to let go of the body it has because it's become a slug, right? So it will do whatever it can to keep you going inside its teaching system so it can sustain and continue to exist. And while you're doing that, your energy system will align so much with the Naga so that when you get reborn, the Naga will travel with you and get reborn as well. So it's hijacked your progression cycle in the enclosure, which is the reincarnation that is not leading to any progression whatsoever, but keeping you enslaved inside the program. But at least it still has a body. right? So this is where we understand that. So when we do enter into another system, we understand that all of the systems of the holographic worlds, the worlds that we are aiming at, we're not going backwards in time. We're not doing humanoid D13 bullshit, service to self, machine, technological, transhuman, android crap. Let's again just saying that one. But we are looking at, okay, we want to kind of do the holographic migration into or transfer into what we call the original density energies of our solar system. So even though we know that they are in a bad state, we are now training to get ready to encounter these wastelands of destruction, which they are. They do not look good. But if we come in with the right understanding, we can transform it. What is left, because the ancient ones and their construction has been pulled out. That's part of the new grand cycle, and it's moving rapidly in that direction, especially since we have entered into evac. That was kind of someone pushed the red button, and then it's pulling out quicker than it was anticipated. It was supposed to do more slowly, but because of the sun shutting down and things that's been happening to the galactic core, etc., it's now has gone into default. So that's pulling out. So we will not be under the guidance of what we could call the ancient ones and their collectives and their constructions. They are being pulled out. So it's not about that, but we will have what we have built, so to speak. And even though most of the technologies of the Pillar project has been taken down because I've been part of that project to ensure that the construction of the ancient ones could be towed out, there are still remnants of it, and there are still echoes, imprints in the holographic network of the outer domain. And since we understand the outer domain is not where we build cities and homes, but where we shed off what is no longer of our convenience and of our use according to our word, our vow, and the will of where we transform and progress and evolve, then we are in the understanding, well, it's just a transitory state where we can then shift into what we need to become. So it doesn't really matter that everything is destroyed, because we are in no better shape ourselves. So this is just kind of, this is what we can align with. But if we understand the dynamics and the governance of holographic systems via our word, vow, and the will, then we also understand that if we are in that strength, if we enter into a dark world, of course, if we stay there and nobody else is kind of, as we saw it with the inversion, we will align with that. So we need to know how to transform. And that's what we could say the purpose of what we're doing now with the matrix of change as well, understanding the developmental programs, which is why I'm using the matrix of change, because it's been engineered for present day. Whereas if you talk about the developmental programs going back in the Pillar project before the fall of Atlantis, well, then the dynamics were completely different. We had accessibility to the fourth and fifth dimension, or the fourth and fifth cycle dynamics of the original density energies. So we had access to that, which we don't have now. So we need to adjust all the time. And that's why in the Changemaker Course 4, come up with the idea that we are to see ourselves live as in a space station, and the future humanities are not the sector they have got inside the Gaian system. They are also visitors there, because we have become migrants. Unfortunately, we are space migrants. And many of the races inside the LPU and this universal structure and the different sectors, they are space migrants. They are not living on a system. That's why this planet became so desirable for some of the insectoids and what have you, because here they could actually have a form. Yeah, all the insects. I just read an article. There are 2.5 million ants per one human. Duh. No wonder there's so many insectoids, right? Go figure. But so no wonder. So they try to make it theirs, which they have also being part of human forms, etc., part of the human DNA, and all of these things that they have arranged and managed to do, even though that they are under what we could say contracts under other higher leveled races from other systems, but they only visit from time to time. So anyway, but we are understanding, and that was the same in the original worlds and the progressive worlds. We are not, there's no home. Home is us. We are home. Our energy form, our holographic energy system, that's our home. We are our own home. So wherever we are home. So that is the understanding of being in alignment with who and what you are, that you're always on some sort of journey where you're transforming energy. That's your work. That's the true work. So whatever you choose to manifest in the place that you currently are inhabiting and currently a part of, that is where you create something that's in alignment with the reality field you're part of, and you are using it to transform energy, to upgrade your own holographic energy system, to develop your consciousness potentials, but always for the highest good of the many of the society you're part of, the world you're part of, always within the purity rate and the standards and the progression rate of the progressive races and the D14 collective. And you don't even question that, because it's part of your template. It's part of your consciousness units and how you re-engineered them to be part of this cycle. And many of you re-engineered them as a reaction to what happened in the previous universal cycle. So you have it in you already that, yeah, we did that, done that, not going to go there again. And that's why many of you are working against the D13 collective in subconscious ways, but you don't know how you're doing or what you're doing. And the key is to stand impeccable, to reach the highest purity rate, to always follow the high standards of the progressive races, the D14 collective rules, principles, and laws, and always follow the laws and the energetic settings of a reality field you're part of, without necessarily becoming part of it, but you're not violating it. You are not harming it. You're not in any ways or forms creating distortion. You stand impeccable. So whether it's a human law, enclosure law, or other people's laws, or their home, or a factory, or a business, or a shop, or on the beach, wherever you are, you follow the rule of that segment, that territory that you're entering into. That's the rules of engagement. Because you will discover as you get more and more of the dimensional side that there's no place on this planet that is not under the rulership of some faction. So you will always stand impeccable, as in not breaking any laws whatsoever. And you will always transform energy for the highest purity rate and for yourself and your surroundings, as well as the highest standards and progression rate of the progressive races of the D14 collective. So that goes without saying. It's in you. You are imbued with it. Every consciousness unit in you has that code sequence of why you're doing what you're doing. Then, of course, you can be a diplomat, you can be a scientist, you can be a judge, you can be a warrior, you can be a guardian, you can be all sorts of stuff that you have added on to that original feature that expresses your consciousness potentials in a specific way. And you can have many different functions. That's why we travel between systems. So we learn all of these different functions. So in that understanding, you now understand, well, when you do holographic transfer, you need to learn the sciences and the habits and the culture, and this is how they do it, not because you're coming in as a stranger and you don't want to cause havoc, but because you energetically need to understand if you want to align and assimilate, because, yeah, I want to go there, or if you just want to go there to learn certain features, and then you will pull out and move on, transforming your energy system to go somewhere else or recreate a molecular state. You need to understand the laws and the rules and the principles of the area you want to enter, because that defines the molecular state you're going to create for yourself. Or you can just travel through as an orb, which is possible, where you just visit it as an orb that is an extension of your perception field. You just holographically create a light orb. You go in and you look, which can be in the fourth dimension or the fifth. Not recommendable, because most of the ones that have done that have been harvested. Not recommendable, but using the original density features, you actually can, but then it's kind of a code system that goes in. And it is what we call a circular code, so that if it does get harvested, it will decompose and will not be of use for the ones that have taken it. That's how we do it when we enter into a hostile system. There are different features that those of us who've been in this game for a long time, been working with the D13 collective, me included. We have learned the hard way what is possible with these groupings. And that's also part of their territorial laws and rules within their sector. And when I, as a D14 collective progression human, enter there, I must train and get ready before I go there, completely understanding what I'm dealing with. And it's not just studying their habits and what they eat and these kind of things. Most holographic races do not eat because we kind of are part of the reality field. So we get our sustenance from the worlds that we are part of. So we're not harnessing the energies. We're one with it. And via our transformation, we are then transforming the light codes that we need to keep ourselves going, at the same time have a positive feedback in the environment that we are part of. So we sustain the reality fields and ourselves by our clearing and energy work. So that's what we need to learn. How do they do that? For instance, if you go into a D10 system or a sector within a D10 system, you go in and say, okay, how do they do it there? How do they transform energy? How do they formulate their physical forms? What are the genetics? What are they made of? What the reality feels? What the laws? How do they work amongst each other? Where do you transgress? What are the laws set? So how will you come under trial if you do this and that, whatever? All of these things. And it's not about verbally expressing something. If you're trialed in a system, you're scanned. It's all done by technology, and you don't have to say a damn thing because nobody's speaking. Everything is telepathic. Everything is holographically visible. Everything is detectable. Everything has its own information system. And if you are in alignment or have the same code sequences, you can read it as an open book. If you don't, you use technology that scans it, but then scans it within, when they're doing trials, for instance, scan it within the sector you're part of, so that they will check for, has your holographic energy system in any ways or forms violated the rules and the laws of the system you're part of? And if it hasn't, well, then you're free to go. So that means that if you can be who you are, but if you don't violate their holographic network and their racial grids and the realities they have decided to create, you are allowed to be who you are. And that's the green card. That's the diplomatic green card. And that's some of the things that I'm trying to get whoever's left here to understand that that's what we are doing here, and therefore we should not be people of interest. But since many of them have been very hungry to get viable genetics, my awakening process has definitely, including taking down the Pillar Project, has been a little bit of what we would call a controversial journey with a lot of obstacles and a lot of counteractions. But luckily, my energy system has that capacity as well. When we talk about governance within reality fields, we already talked about it in a way. So see here, when we talk about politics, does that even exist? The word politics, it comes from polis, it comes from city governments, that goes back to ancient Greece. So therefore, we can't really say, well, there are no politics, but there are rules of engagement. There are, you work and you are and you exist in a specific way. You work with, quote unquote, you transform the complex information system of the reality field you're part of according to the rules and the laws and the principles of the reality field you're part of. And if you don't break any of these rules and laws and principles, then you're good to go to do whatever you feel is your project, to embark on your creational project, your transformative project, your project of engineering something that for a period of time will exist within the reality field you're part of. As long as you are there, it exists. Once you pull out, you decompose what you have created, and by that cause no harm. On contrary, you should have uplifted it. So when you have uplifted it to the next stage or state of energy, well, then that earlier version of your project will decompose anyways because it has lost its purpose and function. Or it will decompose because it's a failure, which means it cannot transform the energies of the reality field you're part of. So governance is not something that's done unto you. Governance is something you do on your own behalf, because you understand that if you do whatever you're doing, let's say you're transforming energy. So this is where we get in a little bit of a trouble here, because we really want to use the words as work and laws and products and all of these solidified expressions of energy that are stagnant, and they will remain once we are done. Our work is completely meaningless. It's all about supporting whatever's going on inside the enclosure. Everything we're doing is to uphold the enclosure and the solidification of energies by producing a lot of stuff that's solidified. Everything we produce is solidified and goes into entropy and decay. So everything that's going on here is short term, so to speak, but we are harnessing the solidified matter to produce stuff, and by that we're imbuing it with our viability. Although we are harnessing the energies of our magnetic field, we are putting all of this into our items, our homes, our cars, our clothes, whatever, and we're tossing that. So in that, we are not in the understanding of how to govern the energies of ourselves, the energies of our reality field, and the energies of our surroundings. And the energies of our planet. Well, even though we kind of say, yeah, well, what's the big loss in kind of harnessing the magnetic field, and then everything just kind of decomposes and go into entropy? Clearly, because it's either way, it's kind of control of the hijackers anyways. But when we move into the density energies, we need to understand that, because once we begin to do the shift, and we begin to get ourselves further and further positioned into where we want to holographically to transfer into, we must understand that if we are not in control of who and what we are, if we are not responsible for our own energy system, have learned to transform it according to the surroundings, have learned the rules of engagement, as in how do you enter into a new energetic setting, encountering other people within that energetic setting and not causing harm to them by dragging all of your old shit with you into that new scenario, where you will then transform and demolish and destroy everything they have built. So you also begin to understand, when we talk about the matrix of change and some of the new programs that are coming in that are reshaping humanity, that are going to do the transition. For others, it's just kind of, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Sounds like laws. That sounds like taking away my personal freedom. But yeah, your personal freedom right now has been to harvest and harness and destroy and demolish and distort and all sorts of negative forms of energy utilization. So if you kind of feel that that's so important for you to keep up, I suggest you join the dark ones or the technocrats or the machine worlds. Go there, because we are not interested. Here we're interested in people that have that huge responsibility for themselves and others and the reality field, and understand the impact that they have, and that they self-adjust, that they self-govern, that they understand the rules and the laws and the sciences of where they want to go. They take the time to study it, to contemplate on it, to build it in, to adapt accordingly, to change everything they are, to create a new quote unquote comfort zone, which is governed by rules and laws and principles, that in everyday living, they follow the highest purity rate, the highest standards, the highest progression rate, whatever they put their hands on. They look at it and say, how can I make it to something that will express the most purified type of original density energies? Whatever we create as businesses should be something that supports the transformation of our reality field into the original density energies. So we are not producing products. We are producing transformative patterns of change that might look as a product, but holographically and energetically, it has a completely different purpose. We produce sciences that will teach us how to develop our mind field into the perception field so we can integrate more of our consciousness potentials. So our sciences will not be about classifying this is that reality and this is what it's made of. No, the sciences are to understand, how do we interact with that reality? How do we interact with the energies that are around us? So this is what we're doing. We are becoming change makers. That's why we're becoming agents of change. That's why I call it the change makers, not as in kind of, yeah, we're doing what we call social entrepreneurship, which it technically is, but it is a social entrepreneurship that goes with what we could say the social standards of the future human communities that are going to, for a period of time, live within the density energies of our reality field that will be like living on Mars or something. It will be very hostile. But once we're working with the original sciences and learn to transform that type of energy, we will work our way through the bands of this system and get more and more connected to the original energies of what we could say the other universal lineages and the other universal structures that are part of the original progressive worlds, because we have taken the responsibility, we have learned the governance of self, others, and reality, and we have learned to work with our core essence in a manner where we are not transforming by doing, by wishing, by want to transform in our projects or whatever we're doing. At that point in time, we are transformative in ourselves. We transform by who we are because we have transformed so much that every single code layer in us is transformative. So I hope you understand that's the purpose of what we're doing here, to become these huge generators that are transforming energy. And that's the transformative energy system. And that's the purpose of it. And if we master that, then we can go into the density fields that are still marked by the timeline event. And then we can do what we're supposed to do in the beginning anyways, and transform that. But we will stand as a group in that time, and we will be more that will carry the frequencies, or the what we call the quanta of light, more correctly, the vibration that will blast the last pieces of the timeline event and what happened there to pieces. And then we can close the door and say, that's it. And we have completed our cycle here, because that's the personal gain that we, by that work, closing the door, and then we move on, and we will never ever have to come back or have anything to do with the D13 collective ever again. And then we will just move on where we truly belong and where we set out to complete our journey to begin with, having done with the past, cleared out all of our connection points, and let it go and just say, yeah, been there, done that, never ever gonna do that again, because that was probably one of the worst cleanup processes ever. But we will have learned so much from it, and our consciousness potentials and our holographic energy system units will be transformative in whatever they are. They will literally plow through all sorts of energies that needs to transform. And that's why we took on that task to begin with, because if we could master what wasn't mastered in the previous universal cycle and still clear it and upgrade it, our life force, our infinity spheres, personal, eternal infinity spheres, would be of a sort of a variety, such a composition, that no matter where we would go, we would be on the top-notch level, similar to the ancient ones. At least that's what I set out to do. Some of you set out to do something differently, but I am and have always been very ambitious in terms of my progression rate. So with that one said, that was a little bit about governance within systems, where you kind of understand, well, there is self-governance first and foremost, and it's all depending on the system that you're part of. So therefore, governance is also relative, has nothing to do with political systems. But since we are in a transition between a system that has what we call rigid governmental systems and rigid societal structures, we thereby also understand that when we as change makers begin to transform and create our projects and do our new type of transformation of energy with whatever product that will lead into, we will be under governance of the system that we're part of. We will not break the laws of the base program. We will not break the laws of the different jurisdictional races that we will come in touch with. And we will still align ourselves with the original purpose and function of the outer domain. And with that, work in a manner that will re-engineer ourselves to do the holographic transfer or the holographic migration out of here. Thank you.